You all probably know the situation already, but I recently made a video on Shaman King 2021 discussing some of the things that I saw as flawed in this new adaptation of a really beloved manga and show. Let's just say that it didn't go very well. Within a week of it being up, it became the second most viewed video on my channel, and by far the most controversial one. And I'd just like to say that most of the people who left comments on this video were perfectly fine. They were extremely respectful in detailing what they agreed and disagreed about on the video, but some of the people were kind of the worst. I got people attacking the validity of my points by saying that I'm, quote, not even a fan of Shaman King, so I shouldn't have made this video. One person even said that I wasn't being fair because I didn't watch the Shaman King anime when it was originally running, so of course I wouldn't like this adaptation, which is complete fucking nonsense for a lot of reasons, but I didn't care, because up until that point I just didn't have the energy to make an entire video defending my points even further than I already have. I'm gonna say that I do still stick by all of the points that I've made in my original video, but there is one thing that I regret not doing beforehand, and that is reading the manga. After I got several comments saying that this adaptation was actually faithful to the manga, I decided to check it out for myself and realized that, yes, Shaman King 2021 is faithful to the manga. So why do I still stick by my arguments in the last video I made? Well, that's because of the difference of medium. In the Shaman King manga, certain things will work better than it does in the anime because of its medium. A lot of comments pointed out that everything that I criticized was just how it happened in the manga, but that's not entirely true, as certain panels in the manga are more ambiguous compared to their respective shots in the anime. For example, when Manta ran off to get the sword, when we get back to Yo in the alleyway, we see him in a slouched position, heavily beaten, and in a lot worse condition than we saw him before. This is indicative of the fact that quite some time has passed since Manta got the sword, so when he gets back in the manga, it doesn't feel as rushed or terrible. I can say the same thing about the movie theater. In the manga, we start at the movie theater at the beginning of the chapter, which is a lot less sudden than the stupid fucking cut the anime put in. The difference between chapters implies a lot more time passing than just a single cut, which is what made it a lot better in the manga compared to Shaman King 2021. Okay, I'm done defending my last video because I want to spend the majority of this video picking apart one comment in particular that I got. I wasn't even going to make this video until I got this comment, which was so ridiculously condescending that I just had to address this. Now, I've gone ahead and cropped out the name of this user, and I've even hidden his comment on the channel so that nobody can go and harass this person. I doubt that anybody would, because I'm a small YouTuber and the small community that I've built up is filled with nothing but wholesome people, but please just don't. If you even by some miracle find the comment, just don't. The things I say in this video might be considered harsh or extremely rude, but just keep in mind that this person was the one who came at me first, and he was being incredibly condescending and disrespectful, which is why I decided to bite back. Anyways, he starts off by saying, compared to the 2000s anime, this is already way more truthful to the manga. From my evaluation on your review, I can see you're being extremely nitpicky and hypocritical. Wrong form of year. By the way, I didn't find out or watch the series until a few years ago, so I have no nostalgia bias for it. By the way, I don't know how much anime you've seen, but this is a very common trope where the villain is so confident in their abilities that it doesn't matter what knowledge their opponent has. That's a huge spoiler, gonna censor that out. But again, this was also to strike fear into her enemies, giving them an idea of how much destructive power she has at her disposal and what she's capable of, considering her family captured one of the strongest martial artists in the world. And the tickets were sent to also gather them in one specified secluded location. And also, by the way, June's family is ridiculously wealthy. I don't know if Ren's golden sparkling blazer didn't make that obvious to you, so spending a bit on tickets for a replayed old film really doesn't matter. And by the way, that was also in the manga. You can see here by how he's talking to me that he thinks that I'm a huge fucking idiot. Mr. I don't know if that was obvious or anything. Yes, I know that June's family is rich. Saying that she wasted her money wasn't an actual criticism I had with the episode. I just said that as a joke. Like, clearly it was a fucking joke. It's not like I was actually concerned that she spent money on some tickets. Oh, I don't know if she can afford that. No, I was poking fun of that in the episode. And yes, that is what happens in the manga, but I won't talk about why his argument is flawed until a bit later. Compared to the original, I recall even initially dropping the 2000s anime because of the dragged out pacing. It seems all the parts you appreciated, like the training montage, were filler. IMO, the faster pacing speed is already a step up. The character designs are way better. They managed to make Anna's somewhat basic, bland appearance look way more bold, sharp, and powerful. And Yo had this unchanging, lazy look in the original, whereas now he's more expressive, while still retaining his mellow, laid-back personality. Even a lot of Take's exaggerated art styles are incorporated. The soundtrack does an excellent job of capturing the mysticism, emotion, and action in each episode. Not gonna lie, I used to be like you and critique every little thing about an anime, basically convincing myself to drop it, but if you pull back a bit, you'll find more enjoyment in anime, especially as it picks up. I would have never repicked up animes like Bungo Stray Dogs, Code Geass, etc. if I had that mindset. The new SK anime storytelling assumes you're already familiar or a fan of the series, kinda like FMA Brotherhood or Hunter x Hunter 2011, hence its quick pacing through the beginning. Now, as I was reading this part of his comment, it read more like a normal comment. I got the impression that here, he's just saying what he likes about the new anime, talking about the soundtrack and character designs, which I have no problems with. But then he starts riding this moral high horse saying that I criticize every little thing in anime, and then he says, "Don't worry, I used to think like you, but I was able to get out of that toxic mindset, and you'll soon learn how to do that yourself." He didn't say the word, but he's basically calling me an elitist, which I'm not. What is so wrong with just making a video expressing my opinions on something? If you actually listen to my video, I criticize the lackluster animation, poor editing, and rushed storytelling. Those are the core elements of making an anime, and if that's criticizing every little thing, then what is fair criticism? Should I just not criticize it and praise the ever-loving shit out of it like some people are doing? It's just so silly, and this guy isn't the only person who thinks that I'm being nitpicky or hypocritical. A lot of comments who disagree with my video literally just call my points nitpicks or unrealistic expectations. I'm choosing to focus on this comment specifically because it encompasses a lot of the arguments people use against my video. Also, I talk about why the whole rushing through material at the beginning to make time for the later material argument is heavily flawed in both of my FMA videos, so go check them out if you want my take on that, because I'm not gonna explain it again. Now, in response to this comment, I inform him that I've actually read the manga and said to him that the additions, in my opinion, to the original adaptation made the fight better, and I said it's also fine if he disagrees with that. I said the changes only added to the source material for me, whereas the new adaptation doesn't do anything to improve on the source material, hence why I called it lazy in my video. I also mentioned the fact that the new adaptation does cut out some important bits of context, like June's introduction, and I mentioned the fact that I don't think it's nitpicky to criticize the animation or editing. All in all, I think this was a pretty passive-aggressive comment, and I should have tried to be more respectful, but here's what this guy had to say to this. Even so, I don't think you're giving credit where credit is due, as the scene where Anna summons Lee's master is already 10 times better than the original. You even see the will-o-wisps taking a humanoid form, which is directly from the manga, or how it's implied June's grandfather is responsible for Lee's death, or his reaction when he reawakens, recalling his life of his family, careers, and experiences, all just shattered as he shatters a poster of himself on glass, but spills no blood and feels no pain, just a chill. Here he says that the scene where Anna summons Pai Long's master is already 10 times better than in the original because it was the same as the manga. And by the way, he uses that a lot. Instead of trying to actually defend his points, he instead says that the way things happen in the new adaptation are just better, simply because that was how it was in the manga. But what he fails to realize is that everything he described in the turn of events of the new adaptation is exactly the same as the original adaptation. The part where he recalls all of his life and the part where he smashes the poster is also in the original adaptation, but just a lot better executed thanks to the fact that the original adaptation actually takes its time adapting the material. Also, it's not implied that June's grandfather killed Pai Long, it's just stated. If we look at the definition of implied, it means suggested, but not directly expressed, implicit. I'm sorry, but the words, "Yes, my parents killed him for my birthday," isn't a piece of subtle dialogue. It doesn't make me think, I wonder what happened to Pai Long. Nobody would think that, because it's right there in the line. In fact, the original had a more subtle line instead of this, where June simply calls Pai Long the strongest birthday present. and the new SK anime storytelling assumes you're already familiar or a fan of the series, kinda like FMA Brotherhood or Hunter x Hunter 2011, hence its quick pacing through the beginning. Also, nothing much really happened in Jun's introduction, and that was only slightly more elaborated in the 2000s, which was more filler. If you've truly read the manga, then you understand how this interpretation is already more accurate, like how episode 5 didn't cut out the part where Ren killed his patch official, which created inconsistent errors later on in the original and will only be expanded in the canon manga ending. And then he just repeats what he said before, as if I didn't notice it the first time, which I did, don't worry. I've seen that piss-poor excuse for an argument being used countless times to defend something. But then, after he continues on to say that my point about Jun's introduction in the manga wasn't good because nothing really happened in the manga panel she was introduced in, which he's right, but that scene isn't important because it has a lot of content in it. It's important because it gives the readers a sense of continuity and context to Jun's actions, which is not present in the anime, making it really sudden when she attacks the main characters out of nowhere. Then he talks about how the new adaptation is accurate to the source material again, but brings up an example from an episode that I didn't even talk about in my video because it wasn't even out when I made my video. Also, he misspelled Ren's name, which is pretty funny. So then I point out, hey, just because it's accurate to the manga, it doesn't mean that it's good, and I even said that that was just my opinion. And then you can tell that I tried to end the conversation here by saying that it's good that he can enjoy SK 2021, but I just personally don't. This one was a lot less rude than my last comment, so I thought that that was where the conversation was going to come to an end. But oh boy was I wrong, cause he comes in with another comment saying, I suppose so, though the original is completely irrelevant to the 2021 version. If you overly compare anything to its predecessor, then you won't find anything noteworthy in the new incarnation. If anything, I've noticed newcomers enjoy it a lot as they have no attachment or bias to the first iteration. Again, a lot of those extra added scenes you enjoyed with the original go without saying. You're already familiar with that interpretation. Two things here, he completely contradicts some of his last statements, saying that this anime expects you to have knowledge of the original Shaman King to enjoy this one, but then says that I can't enjoy this adaptation because of my knowledge of the original adaptation and how I'm already familiar with the original. Some real stupid shit for your arguments here. And another thing is that he just completely discredits the original Shaman King, saying that it's old and dated, which is why it's irrelevant to the newer adaptation, even though the original Shaman King anime is a cult classic and many people have fond memories of it. So far, given by my comment section, a lot more fond memories than the new one could produce. Also, the point about newcomers enjoying the anime doesn't mean anything because I could just say that newcomers are really confused with what's happening in the new anime. You even said before that you're expected to have knowledge of the original Shaman King to enjoy this one. And just one more nail in the coffin, there was a comment in this very comment section from a person talking about how her boyfriend doesn't get anything that's going on in the new Shaman King, so I actually have some proof to back up my claim from both you and someone who isn't even involved in this. I'd be very bored if this was just a carbon copy of that with just upgraded animation. It really wouldn't be anything new. I used to be like you and critique every little thing about an anime and basically convince myself to drop it. If you pull back a bit though, you'll find more enjoyment in a lot of series, especially as they pick up. I would have never re-picked up animes like Bungo Stray Dogs, Code Geass, etc. if I held on to that mindset, but you're free to do as you wish. I never said that what I wanted from this anime was a carbon copy of the original adaptation, but with better animation. What I wanted from the new adaptation was effort and time dedicated to its early segments, because I don't like it when a story rushes through everything in the beginning because they just didn't want to cover that material. Also, it would be welcome if the new adaptation at least tried to make its own changes, rather than just copy and pasting the manga, because if it does that, some of the shit in it won't translate well to the anime format, which is why adaptations are a thing in the first place. Also, he repeats the same thing as he did in his first comment, which again is the most ridiculously condescending thing he could ever say, and I don't know why he feels the need to keep saying the same thing over and over again. So after this I say, look, I don't want it to be a carbon copy of the original, I just want it to improve on the source material while also improving on the original anime, but I feel like it doesn't do that. And then I say, if that's nitpicking, then there's nothing I can do about it. Again, you can see that I'm trying to end the conversation, but then he replies by saying, I mean, it has. I already noted 2 parts it does that. You just won't recognize it for some reason. So then I ask what 2 parts. I may have missed it, you know, thinking that maybe he, giving him the benefit of the doubt, basically. thinking that maybe he actually did have something to say back to my comments instead of just repeating the same shit over and over again and hoping to get his original point across, even though at this point in the conversation, I already know what he's implying about me, and I'm trying to move on from it and trying to, you know, add to the fucking discussion, but he's just stuck in this time loop. Like, he just doesn't see anything that I'm saying. So then he responds, giving his examples, Anna channeling Lee's master and Lee reawakening. Want me to give you more examples? Hold on a second, because I know that, like, a lot of you are confused, because before he said that this part that he is mentioning was just like how it was in the manga, which just completely goes against what he said before. So I pointed that out in my response to him by saying, you said that that's how it was in the manga too, so how does that prove that the new adaptation is making changes to the source material to put its own sense of personality and style into it? He then replies by saying, the scene where will-o-wisps are slowly summoned and taken on the shape and form of Lee Pylon's master. In case you might know, Eastern cultures believe in reincarnation, so it's through the gathering of past lives that one original form can be taken. This shows in various other supernatural anime like Inuyasha, like in Kikyo's Rebirth. I like that the studio took the liberty in subtly showing these spirit flames appear and take form of one of their past lives. This is explored more in SK. This wasn't as elaborate in the original manga panels nor for the first anime iteration. Wow, you can really see how that addition to the anime really changes the game. That's what separates the new adaptation from the manga. That's one of the best changes ever in the history of adaptations. Look, I know that that's a cool detail and nod to Eastern culture, but that doesn't add anything to the plot of this episode, nor does it count as a reasonable change at all. You have to be actively looking for that in the anime and directly comparing that scene to the panel the shot was based off of. And even if I did count that, that's literally one thing that the new adaptation does, while there were a lot more actually noticeable changes in the original Shaman King during this story, which only serves to strengthen the material being handled. Another problem that I have with this comment is that he constantly talks about changes in the old Shaman King and refers to them as filler, which just paints a negative picture for something that's actually good. But he then goes on to say, other thing too is the studio should not always make changes in adapting the manga in its own sense of personality or style, because that is tampering with the source material. It's already an improvement from the old adaptation because the first iteration heavily digressed from the creator's vision of the story, as I've already mentioned with Ren killing Apache Official to the entire ending of the series. You might call it copy and paste, however I believe that's respecting and preserving the creator's telling of the story, which I found the manga to be much more impactful and interesting than the knockoff first anime. I could go on about how awful the liberties the original took, like cutting out Faust replacing broken bones with grave parts, ripping Manta's body open, cutting out the plane drop scene, Faust ending up in a wheelchair, the fate of Lily Rara, the Ghost Bearer chapter, etc., or how poorly Hao's team were introduced or Lasso's connection to the X-Laws left out, and I don't even want to get started on the Lily 5 or Ren's filler cousins. I could go on. Thankfully, he doesn't go on, because I was losing brain cells just reading this shit. But let's just slam fucking dunk on this last comment and call it a day. Firstly, notice how he goes on a rant towards the end about things that I don't even mention in this video, because the new adaptation hadn't covered that yet, and he uses this as a means of arguing against my video and my opinions on the Pai Long arc, even though it has nothing to do with the subject of the conversation. And I don't have a problem with bringing this up in general. There are a lot of people who talk about the anime original ending, the X-Laws, and the Lily 5 in this comment section, but when they bring it up, they don't try to use it and say, ha, see, this video is bad because this thing later on that isn't even mentioned in the video happened. And my final statement is that you shouldn't speak on part of the original creator of Shaman King. You say that the liberties that the original Shaman King took were tainting the source material, and the new adaptation is trying to preserve it. Yet you don't even know that the manga author for Shaman King was on the production staff for the original anime, and he hadn't finished the manga by the time the anime got to the ending. So, the anime that apparently went against the so-called vision of the author was actually the result of the participation of that very author with the rest of the team working on the anime. The author even specifically turned down the making of a new Shaman King anime unless he could get the same voice actors and OST as the original Shaman King way back in 2017. So don't talk as if you know what the author of the manga wants when you clearly don't. Also, yes, an adaptation should always make changes to the source material, otherwise there's no point in adapting it. If there are no changes made, there has to be something that sets it apart from the original manga. For example, My Hero Academia, I don't recall any major changes from the manga, but its animation is superb and one of the main reasons to watch it over reading it. The same could be said for a lot of adaptations there. There needs to be some difference other than the fact that it has color, voice acting, and music, otherwise you should just read the manga. After this comment, I basically said that we should agree to disagree and end this conversation because we were quite frankly wasting our time having this debate. No matter what we say to each other, the other won't change their mind. That's kind of the norm with online discussions, but even if that's the case, please, guys, don't make a comment like this because it's extremely patronizing and it makes you look like a huge asshole. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say and I'll be going now.